My son promised me he would take care of me after my husband passed away. He looked me in the eyes and said I would never have to worry about anything. But just 1 week later, he sold my house for $650,000 without even asking me. I stayed silent. And then, the very next morning, his bank account showed insufficient funds, and he called me 27 times in a panic. Before I tell you what happened, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Evelyn. I am 67 years old, and until recently, I believed I had raised a son who would honor his promises. My husband George and I built a life together in a modest home. It wasn't a mansion, but it was filled with love and memories. That house carried the story of our lives, birthdays, anniversaries, and the sound of our son's footsteps running down the hall when he was small. When George passed away 2 years ago, that house became even more important to me. Every corner reminded me of him, the garden we planted together, the rocking chair on the porch where we drank coffee, the pictures of Daniel growing up on the walls. It was all I had left of a man who worked hard his whole life to give us stability. In those first lonely months after George was gone, Daniel was my light. He came often, checking on me, making sure I ate, sitting with me in the evenings. One night he said, "Mom, you don't ever have to worry. I'll take care of you. Always." Dad would want that. His words brought me comfort, and for a while, I believed him. I trusted him because he was my son. I thought, if George couldn't be here, at least Daniel would stand in his place. I told myself it was a blessing to have a child who cared. But underneath that hope, there were small signs I ignored. Daniel liked to talk about money. He liked big plans and fast results. He wasn't content with steady work. He wanted more, always more. Still, I brushed those worries aside. I wanted to believe in him. I wanted to believe in his promise. That trust is what made the shock so painful when, just a week later, everything I held on to was taken from me. It was a quiet afternoon when I found out the truth. I was sitting at my kitchen table, drinking tea, when Daniel walked in with a smile stretched across his face. He had that same confident look he often wore, like he was about to share some great accomplishment. "Mom," he said, pulling out a chair, "I have amazing news. I sold the house." At first, I thought I misheard him. I set my teacup down slowly and looked at him. "What did you say?" He leaned forward, his eyes shining with excitement. "I sold it, Mom. $650,000. Can you believe it? We're rich now. You don't have about a single thing." And my heart sank, trembles. I gripped the edge of the table. "Daniel, that was your father's house. That was our home. You had no right." He brushed off my words like they meant nothing. "Mom, come on. That house was old. It needed repairs. You don't need all that space anymore. This is a fresh start. Think of everything we can do with that money." The more he spoke, the heavier the air in the room became. To him, it was just a transaction, numbers in an account. To me, it was the place where I raised him, where I kissed my husband goodnight for decades, where every memory of love and family still lived. And now, it was gone. I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to it, I said quietly, fighting back tears. Daniel sighed and rolled his eyes. "Mom, please, don't get emotional. This is progress. I know what I'm doing. I'll invest the money, flip it, double it, maybe even triple it. You'll thank me later." His words stung more than if he had shouted at me. I sat there in silence, trying to understand how my own son could make such a decision without even asking me, without even considering what the house meant to me. But I couldn't find the strength to argue. I simply nodded, swallowing the pain. That night, Rachel, his wife, came to see me. She looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat as we sat together in the living room. After a long pause, she finally said, "Evelyn, I told him not to rush. I told him you wouldn't be happy about it. But Daniel doesn't listen once he has his mind set on something." Her words gave me little comfort. If she couldn't stop him, what chance did I have? He was my son, but he was also stubborn, proud, and so sure he was right. Over the next few days, I began to see how Daniel was spending the money. He came home in new clothes, wearing an expensive watch that glistened under the light. He spoke about business dinners in fancy restaurants, about meeting people who promised him big opportunities. He kept throwing around words like investment, profit, and future. But when I asked for details, his answers were vague. "Don't worry, Mom," he said with a confident smile. "I've got this under control. Trust me." Trust. That was the word that cut me most deeply. I had trusted him my whole life. I had trusted him with my love, with my heart, with the legacy his father left behind. And this was how he repaid me. Every night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, asking myself the same questions. Should I have fought harder? Should I have told him no? Should I have demanded he return the house? But the truth was, it was too late. The papers were signed. The house was gone. The only thing left was silence. I stayed quiet, not because I agreed with him, but because I didn't know what else to do. He was my son, and even when children make mistakes, mothers carry the pain quietly, hoping they will come to their senses. But deep down, I felt something dark creeping in, a sense of dread. I knew Daniel wasn't careful. I knew he was chasing dreams, bigger than his reach, and I feared that the money he was so proud of would not last long. I remembered George, my late husband, always saying, "Easy money slips through your fingers faster than water." And as I watched Daniel celebrate like he had conquered the world, those words echoed in my mind. I couldn't stop him. I couldn't undo what was already done, but I could feel it in my bones. Something was coming, something he wasn't prepared for, and when it arrived, it would shake everything. The days after the house was sold felt strangely empty. I would wake up in the morning and stare at the space around me, no longer surrounded by the familiar walls of the home George and I had built. I was staying temporarily with Daniel and Rachel in their new place, but it didn't feel like home. The walls were cold, the rooms were filled with furniture that wasn't mine, and every corner reminded me that I was living in someone else's decisions, not my own. Daniel seemed more excited than ever. He strutted around the house like a man who had just conquered the world. He spoke constantly about money, about the deals he was making, about how much bigger his future was going to be now that he had capital to play with. "Mom," he said one morning at breakfast, "you'll see. This was the best decision ever. I'm already talking to investors. They're telling me I can double the money in months, maybe even more. Just imagine, Mom, your golden years spent in comfort, without a single worry." He said it with such confidence that for a brief second, I almost believed him. But then I looked at the receipts scattered on the kitchen counter, the credit card statements piling up, the expensive takeout bags in the trash, and I knew better. Rachel noticed it too. Late at night, when Daniel wasn't around, she would sit with me quietly. One evening, she said, "Evelyn, he's moving too fast. He doesn't think things through. I try to warn him, but he doesn't listen. He says I'm being negative." I placed my hand on hers and nodded. "He's always been like this. Even as a boy, he wanted shortcuts. George used to scold him, but I often let it slide. Maybe I shouldn't have." Rachel gave me a sad smile. "He loves you, but he doesn't know how to show it right. And now, with this money, he feels untouchable." Her words sat heavy on my heart. I didn't want to see my son fall, but I could sense it was coming. He was living too fast, spending too freely, trusting too easily. Within a week, I saw the pattern grow worse. Daniel hosted a dinner for his business partners at an upscale restaurant. When I asked him about it, he waved me off. "Mom, these people are important. They're going to make me rich. You wouldn't understand." But I did understand. I had seen men like that before. Smooth talkers, always promising, never delivering. George used to call them wolves in suits. They circled men like Daniel, waiting for them to hand over everything without asking questions. One evening, I quietly peeked at his laptop while he left it open on the dining table. What I saw made my chest tighten. Emails with strangers, promises of guaranteed returns, links to shady investments, words like quick cash and limited offer. They were all red flags. He was being pulled into something dangerous, and he was too blind to see it. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I went to my room, closed the door, and thought of George. My husband had always been cautious, always saving, always warning us to think ahead. I remembered how he once told me, "Evelyn, If I go first, promise me you'll be careful with what we built. Don't let anyone take it from you." And that's when it hit me. I had one thing left that Daniel didn't know about. Years ago, George had opened a small savings account in my name, separate from the house and everything else. It wasn't a fortune, but it was steady, enough for me to survive if things went wrong. Daniel didn't know it existed, and I never told him, because I wanted something safe, something untouched. That night, I went to the bank and quietly checked the account. The money was still there, untouched, waiting. As I stood there, the teller smiling politely, I felt both relief and sorrow. Relief that George's wisdom had left me with a safety net. Sorrow that my son's recklessness meant I might need it sooner than I ever imagined. From that moment, I made a decision. I would stay quiet. I wouldn't argue with Daniel anymore, because arguing only pushed him further away. Instead, I would watch. I would prepare myself for the day when his world came crashing down. And I knew that day was not far away. The way he was spending, the way he was gambling on promises, the way he ignored every warning, it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. At dinner, a few nights later, he came home in a brand new car, shiny and expensive. He tossed the keys onto the table and grinned. "See, Mom, things are going great." I smiled faintly, but inside, I felt my stomach sink. That car was not a sign of success. It was a warning. The higher he climbed on shaky ground, the harder the fall would be. Rachel caught my eye across the table. She didn't say a word, but the fear in her expression matched mine. She knew it too, and so, I waited, quietly, patiently, not because I wanted my son to fail, but because I knew I could not stop him. Some lessons in life, no matter how painful, can only be learned the hard way, and when the fall finally came, it would shake him to the core. It was early in the morning when the silence of the house broke, with the sound of Daniel's footsteps pacing up and down the hallway. I could hear him muttering, his voice sharp and filled with panic. I got up slowly and opened my door just enough to see him stand in the living room, his phone clutched in his hand. His hair was messy, his face pale, and his confident smile, the one he always wore, was gone. Come on," he whispered, tapping the screen over and over again. His voice grew louder with each word. "This doesn't make sense. Where's the money?" I stepped into the room quietly. "Daniel, what's wrong?" He turned to me with wide eyes. For the first time in a long time, I saw fear in my son's face. "Mom, it's gone. The money is gone. I tried to transfer funds this morning, and the account says, insufficient funds. I had over $600,000 in there. It can't just vanish." My chest tightened. I knew this day would come, but still, hearing it said out loud cut deep. "Daniel," I said softly, "did you check carefully? Maybe it's just a mistake." He shook his head violently. "No, Mom, it's not a mistake. I called the bank. The transfers cleared days ago. The accounts I sent money to, they're empty. I can't reach the people I was working with. Their numbers are disconnected. Their emails bounce back. They took everything." His voice cracked, and he slammed his phone down on the table so hard that Rachel came rushing out of the bedroom. She froze when she saw the look on his face. "Daniel, what's happening?" "They robbed me," he shouted. "All of it. The whole $650,000. It's gone. We're broke." Rachel's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. She sank into the couch as if her legs could no longer hold her weight. "I told you not to trust them," she whispered. "I told you this would happen." Daniel ignored her. His eyes darted back to his phone as it began to ring again. He grabbed it, looked at the screen, and then let it fall back to the table. "Mom," he said in a shaky voice, "I've called you 27 times. Why didn't you answer?" I frowned, confused. "What do you mean? I've been here all morning." His face crumbled, and he looked down at the phone. "I meant to call the man who promised me the deal, but my fingers kept pressing your number instead. 27 times. I don't even know why." His voice lowered to a whisper. "Maybe because I knew you were the only one who would still pick up." Those words cut into me. I wanted to feel sympathy, but anger burned in my chest. I thought of the home he had taken from me, the legacy his father left us, and how easily he had thrown it away. "Daniel," I said, my voice firm, You sold the house that your father built with his own 2 hands. You sold the place where I raised you, where every memory of love lived, and you sold it for greed. You didn't lose the money. You gave it away, chasing dreams that were never real. He collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I thought I could make us rich. I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted to give you more than Dad ever could. I shook my head slowly. Your father didn't give me riches, Daniel. He gave me a home. He gave me loyalty. He gave me love. That was worth more than all the money in the world. And you threw it away without a second thought. Rachel spoke up, her voice trembling. What do we do now? We have nothing left. I straightened my back, feeling a strength rise in me that I hadn't felt in years. You may have nothing, but I do. I still have my dignity. I still have George's savings that you don't know about. And I still have the strength to go on. But you, Daniel, you have to live with the weight of what you've done. Daniel looked at me with tear-filled eyes, the arrogance finally stripped away. Mom, please, I need your help. Just one more chance. I can fix this. But I had heard those words before, in different forms, from men like him who thought they could outrun consequences. And I knew the truth. This was the fall George had warned me about. I will always love you, I said quietly, but I will not rescue you from the hole you dug. Sometimes, the only way to learn is to feel the pain of your own choices. He buried his face in his hands, his body shaking with sobs. Rachel sat beside him, silent tears running down her cheeks. I stood there, watching the two of them, and felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the son I had raised, who had betrayed my trust. Relief that finally, the truth had caught up with him. The house was gone. The money was gone. But I was still here, and I would not let his mistakes define me. For the first time since George passed, I felt my husband's voice in my heart again. Stand tall, Evelyn. You're stronger than you know. And so I did. The days that followed were quiet, but they were heavy. Daniel barely left his room, and when he did, he carried himself like a man who had aged 10 years overnight. The spark in his eyes was gone, replaced by regret and fear. Rachel moved around the house like a shadow, speaking only when she needed to, carrying the weight of his failure along with him. For me, it was strange. I had lost my house, the place where I built my life with George, the place where I raised my son. But instead of feeling broken, I felt something different, something almost like strength. The house was gone, yes, but my memories of it could never be sold. The people I loved within its walls, my husband and my son when he was still a boy, still lived in my heart. Money and property could not erase that. One evening, as the sun dipped low and filled the sky with a soft orange glow, Daniel finally came to me. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same place where he once announced he had sold the house. This time, there was no pride in his voice, only guilt. Mom, he whispered, his hands shaking. I don't know how to make this right. I ruined everything. I ruined us. I looked at him for a long moment before answering. Daniel, you didn't ruin me. You only ruined yourself. You thought money was the answer to everything, but money without wisdom is nothing but sand slipping through your fingers. Your father knew that. I knew that. Now, finally, you do too. His lips trembled. I thought I was helping. I thought I could give you more than Dad ever could. I reached across the table and took his hand. Your father didn't give me money. He gave me security. He gave me loyalty. He gave me honesty. That is what makes a man great, Daniel. Not the size of his bank account. You wanted to give me riches, but all I ever wanted was for you to give me respect. He lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let my voice break. I don't forgive the choice you made, Daniel, but I will always love the boy I raised. You will always be my son, but love doesn't mean I will save you from consequences. This is your burden now, and you must carry it. Rachel, who had been standing quietly near the doorway, finally spoke. Her voice was soft but firm. Evelyn, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of this. You deserve to be honored, not betrayed. I'll do everything I can to make sure he learns from this. I promise you that. I gave her a small nod. I believe you, Rachel. Sometimes it takes a fall this hard for a person to finally see clearly. I hope Daniel learns what truly matters before it's too late. From then on, things were different. Daniel stopped chasing big deals. He stopped talking about riches and investments. He was humbled, stripped of the arrogance that had once filled him. Whether he truly learned, I could not yet say, but I saw the beginning of change, and sometimes, beginnings are enough. As for me, I began to build a new life. It wasn't in the home George and I shared, but I carried that home in my heart. I still had his savings, the money he had set aside in my name, the one account Daniel didn't know about. It wasn't enough to buy back what I had lost, but it was enough for me to live with dignity, and enough to remind me of the wisdom George left behind. One evening, as I sat on a porch swing outside Rachel's house, I felt the cool breeze on my face and thought of George. I whispered into the air, "I kept my promise, love. I didn't let him destroy me, and maybe, just maybe, he'll learn from this." The betrayal left scars, yes, but it also gave me clarity. I realized that no matter how much you give to someone, you cannot control what they do with it. You can love your child with all your heart, but they must choose their own path. And when that path is wrong, sometimes the only thing you can do is step back and let them face the pain of their choices. That was my lesson, and it was not an easy one. A house can be sold, money can be stolen, but self-respect, wisdom, and love, those are things no one can take from you unless you hand them away. As I looked at Daniel, broken but humbled, I realized something important. Maybe this was the only way for him to learn. Maybe this was the only way for him to finally grow into the man his father always wanted him to be. And as for me, I chose peace. I chose to live not in bitterness, but in strength, because life is too short to let betrayal define you. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.